insurance industry is changing. The pace at which everyone is doing business is accelerating. My name is Pat West, and I'm here to find out what the United States of Insurance is all about. Hello, and welcome to part 2 of the United States of Insurance. I'm Pat West. Today, I'm going to share an interview I did with Billy Van Jura. Billy is an insurance agent in New York State and is also somebody that is quite active in the online innovation conversation. Call it insurtech if you like. But if you are a startup founder or you are a carrier management team or anybody in between, you're going to want to check out this interview because we talked about it all. To get things started, I asked Billy what he thought was the most overlooked opportunity in the insurance industry. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
Conversation last night. Everyone wants to throw that goofy, bring the sexy back to insurance and do this and do that. And I've been around for 16 years and it never was that. And I suspect it never was that before I was here, right? I think you need to understand, and it's something I did with interns a way back. They basically said, let's not focus. What are some things you want to learn? And let's just put them in context with what I have to do in insurance, right? And one guy wanted to do a website, the other person wanted to do some PR and some writing, and it's okay. Let's figure out how to do those things. And that's something where these newer entrants, and I look, maybe not as extensively as it sounds like you have, but I absolutely take a look at the job description to say, essentially, to a degree, what am I competing against? And most of them do a great job at focusing on all the stuff you get to do for your fellow human beings, right? That they focus on, you are helping people, you're taking an experience that's not necessarily known for being exciting and wonderful and fun, and you're given an opportunity to make it that, right? And that's something that gets overlooked. So when you're talking to newer people about coming into insurance who, if they're already biased, that's fine. You and I aren't going to overcome like the massive institutional bias that's been out there for decades. So I think we just need to, almost on a one-to-one basis or whenever we're given a forum like this, just say, before you believe, your friends and your neighbors who are maybe upset at some companies or haven't had essentially a moment of time that wasn't very good with insurance, why don't you look a little bit and see how massive this industry was or is even. I was in a room last night with people that work globally with massive operations, and there was 5 of us sitting around a table, and all 5 of us have a different story in insurance. I didn't even know the names of the companies these other people were talking about, but then I looked them up and like, my goodness, we're all in the same industry doing completely different things, right? There's a huge amount of diversity, and you could really, if you choose to, carve your own path. And you can't always say that about every industry.
It's really cool to see Billy touch on the flexibility part of it. If you recall in part 1, that was something that Kelsey Alcorn pointed out as well. So now that's kind of one of the first reoccurring themes that we're seeing is the flexibility and kind of maybe the misunderstanding of the insurance industry itself. So for question 2, I asked Billy where he thought the insurance industry could do a better job explaining the insurance career. Here's what he had to say about that.
I think there are some people that even in the industry right now that fall victim to I don't want to label myself an insurance person, right? And I want to label myself something else. And I'm a marketer, or, we're using digital tools or running a digital agency and all these fun things. That's cool. But I take some pride in my work, and I go back and forth with some insurance guys I know often. I don't like the word producer. I just don't understand it. You've put effort into earning a license, right? You are technically considered a licensed insured professional who has to actually buy, you have to buy insurance to cover your actions. You have to continue to take continuing education, and you slap this word producer on, and I say to myself, who wants to buy insurance from a producer? Why don't you just say it like it is, right? And I appreciate that you characterize yourself as a marketer, but we need a lot more professionals in insurance. Now, it doesn't mean you're not a professional. It doesn't mean you're not good at what you do. It just means that we as an industry are going to be our best recruiters, right? We're the ones that are going to help other people come in, and you definitely want to show them your day to day, have some variety in your doings, but to not take some amount of pride in referring to yourself as a licensed insurance agent, maybe you need to reconsider what you're doing, you know?
It would be hard to have a discussion about the future of the insurance industry without directly approaching the reality of a big majority of the agency population retiring. So we discussed what some expectations Billy has for the gray wave and dove a little bit deeper into what the future looks like.
It's a very careful line that most of the world is has to deal with now, is that do we actually need to replace all the expected retiring people, right? You know, do we need that same amount of whatever the number is? 35,000 people are going to retire in the next 3 years. The truth is, we probably only need 15,000 to do their work, right? And I know maybe you don't want to hear that, some people, but you know, I've been there's several opportunities we're exploring right now, and you go in operations where there's 1 to 5 people in there, and you start looking around at the tools they're not using, and you say, geez, we probably don't need all 5 people. We'd probably be good with 2.5, right? And I think the overall industry can do a better job, but then you really have to go to the micro level and say, what can we do differently at the, you know, the main street or even the regional broker kind of level, and then what can we do differently at the carrier level? And they're similar challenges, whereas they both need better messaging, but I don't know that there's a clear-cut answer just yet. Meaning, there's so much transition on the agent broker side, where you can get away with using call centers for a bit. Maybe you don't need to replace someone. 50 states have 50 different licensing laws, right? So it's tougher to get licensed in some states than it is in other states. And hiring comes with a cost to it, right? There's the physical expense of paying the person, and then there's the expense of training the person. And some companies are trying to help. They have, you know, development programs for new agents and things like that. But the way they're teaching them is probably a decade behind, right? So I can use these company resources and sort of check some boxes, but they're not taught in a way that's preparing them to be a part of our operation for the next 10 years, right? So I think the clear-cut thing that you can do is to continue to be a positive voice and apply time and effort, and if you're a carrier, maybe a little bit of money, to promoting it as a good industry to work in. But do as you do and take that angle from, you know, these new entrants, and kind of learn from how they're pitching it, learn from how they're getting people interested in working with their companies, that there is some versatility, that there are opportunities for travel to work in different places. You can work remotely, things like that. Maybe you just need to go to your hubs, right? Maybe you need to go to Des Moines. Maybe you need to go to Hartford. Maybe you know, whether you're up in Boston with several companies, you know, you need to be creative where you're working, and don't think of it as a recruiting event as much as it's a, you know, well, how do we make more people at least interested in our company? I mean, think about it. If you're a national level or a super regional level company, if you simply took the LinkedIn profiles of all your employees and asked all of them to introduce one person to your company, you'd probably have more job applicants than you know what to do with. Simple fix, but then it probably has to go through legal, and then they'll probably pitch it in such a way that's just kind of lame, and then you've done nothing. So there is no answer, but there's a whole bunch of ways we can do better.
A big question I get asked is whether or not insurtech will replace traditional insurance agencies. And I thought there would be very few people that would have a better perspective on that than Billy. So here's what Billy had to say about the idea that insurance agents could be replaced by online platforms.
There's nothing factual to that statement. Like they're just not that far ahead of you, because quite frankly, nobody's in the same race.
Now, even with a head start, that doesn't mean that things are never going to change. So I asked Billy, as a follow-up question, how does he stay ahead on industry trends?
You can do immediately. Spend less time paying attention to the channels you've been paying attention to for the last decade, because most of them haven't improved. Now that I will not name any particular professional associations by name. There are several of them out there. They are good conduits for information. But what I'll tell you is this. I took a little trip this weekend and I knew I was taking it. So I've been backlogging my magazines for probably 2 or 3 months. So I had 3 well-known national publications, kind of maybe 2 or 3 issues of each of them. The truth is, the writing available through my curated LinkedIn and Twitter is as good as anything I read in those magazines. The difference is the stuff that's written online by people that are actually in the field and haven't been kind of gifted or chosen to be published in a physical form are just as good, right? One, and just because she's a name, all right, I'll paint the broad brush and say insurance nerds, right? One of their members has a regular column, I think it's Insurance Journal or something like that, or even Rough Notes, whatever it is. She has a regular column in there. I can state my opinion here and say I believe what she talks about online or what the curated group of that she's a part of collectively as insurance nerds does better work than what is published. Right. So if you're only reading the industry trade magazines and think that'll help you keep up, I don't think they're helping you keep up as much as they did 10 years ago. And if you're only going to your annual or your monthly meetings for your regional chapter of a particular group who might bring in a speaker and talk about something, you're getting their version of a picture, not the version of a picture, right? I asked a question last night to a couple of people. I said, you and I both follow Cont'd. I've been with Cont'd before it was Cont'd, right? So, but I said, I'm struggling to have that second option, right? I don't need a second option, but if there was one I should let into my inbox, who is it? And, a name came up that I've heard before, but they locked their stuff behind a paywall. So I'm not interested, right? Because you think more of your data than it's actually worth. You need to do a better job of curating where your information comes from. You need to go have dialogues. Listen, I got home, I was in bed last night, give or take 11 o'clock, which isn't late, but it's late when you spent 4 hours commuting down and back to the city so you can get into some dialogues with people you wouldn't otherwise meet, right? So putting yourself in conversations that are interesting. I happened to be in London over the weekend, made some introductions. There's some people I've kept in touch with via the internet. The one guy said, you should meet this person. Next thing you know, I'm in a dialogue with a very high level person who's doing some really interesting work that's probably 6 months to a year in front of what we might see in the US. That's what you need to choose to do. Not my path. You need to make your own version of that, but you need to get the information from other sources, because don't rely on somebody to curate that knowledge for you. And that's just a massive mistake. So to that professional development point, I don't know if I got called out or I called somebody out there. Somebody posted about CE classes, and CE is borderline useless, but we all have to do it. But choose to educate yourself, choose to get some knowledge on your own, and not rely on your old sources too heavily. Get a better mix in there. Read from some different publications, and don't rely on insurance, right? If you're just relying on insurance publications, that's part of where this whole insurtech thing came up, is they just kind of snuck in the back door while nobody was looking. So
at this point, when Billy brought up how insurtech kind of came in through the back door, I decided to get into the specifics about his agency, how they operate, and how they're creating value that competes with some of these new entrants.
I mean, the disclaimer is I don't hide anything. We are as flawed and as vulnerable as every other agency there is, right? None of us are quite sure exactly what's coming down the pipe. There's a massive amount of things, the way I frame it is like, you have to run a business. You have to do everything business-wise right, but then you have to run an insurance business as well. And they are different things. And the margins change, and then this changes and that changes, and there's all sorts of things. But what I continue to go back to is, but if I continue to be, and now I think of it as myself, and there's probably 6 folks that work really closely with me, if we just simply continue to be human beings who other people want to buy insurance from, and create an atmosphere, if you will, that they're just feel compelled to share with other people, we'll be fine. It's not easy. Listen, there's a whole lot of change. Like someone keeping up's not the right word, but trying to spend a good portion of your time allocated towards what's new, what could be coming, and then being thoughtful enough to take that information and send it out elsewhere. Excuse me, that's a huge challenge. And most agents are simply focused on using the new tools to replace the old tools. And I think you and I just did a quick online thing this morning, right? Where, yeah, but have you even stopped to look and see how you can gather that data? And how we look at it is, yeah, but because we use a lot of public data sources, that gives me more, that normal 15-minute onboarding, gather the data kind of part, I can do it in 6 or sometimes less. And now I can spend 10 minutes making friends with you, right? So I'm not sitting there asking you for your VIN numbers or asking your opinion on coverage. I put a blanket thing out there. Do you have any general questions? But I know the offer I'm going to put in front of you is probably higher than what you have right now. And I've got a success rate on that in excess of 80%, right? And it doesn't mean we're writing a crazy amount of coverage. It just means that on automobile liability, I start at 500,000. That doesn't mean we always end there. It just means that by choosing to start there, I've set the tone of how we're going to work, right? And it's the same thing with home insurance. There's certain endorsements we don't negotiate. Like, no, that this is the home policy. Now, just because the carrier chooses not to make it standard, I don't care, right? Because I have 20 different carriers, and we've chosen to say, well, we're going to make it standard for all of you. I'm not going to convince you 20 companies to make it standard. We've chosen to make it standard, and we're just going to move forward. That's kind of the end of it, right? And it's our website could be better. Our offices could have better technology. They can look modern. They can look fancy. Like all those things, we have the same problems everybody else does, but I've solved a few. We have no shortage of human beings to work with, period. We have this ongoing drip that most days is more of a steady flow. And if you've got that, to a degree, everything else isn't really a problem. I make the time to write. This morning I caught a good flow. On the train home last night, I caught a good flow. But then I'll go in a week where I just need to quote business because we are backlogged and I just need to sit and do the nitty gritty stuff. I don't give a darn what the calendar or what somebody says you need to do this and you need to do that and you need to keep a presence and you need to do a photo a day. And that's cool. But then you become this automated machine and you've lost the whole wonder of this internet where if you're just being genuine, it'll sell more, right? And I don't know. It's like I said, I don't view us as any better than anybody else. I'm sure we're better in a lot of categories. We just kind of tend to approach things differently. And I think, as an industry, I think more people, if they stopped and said, didn't think necessarily about brand, but said, yeah, but the whole picture. Where am I and what do we want to do? Because just continuing to be your neighborhood agent and having options and things like that, you are replaceable. You don't have to like that statement, but you are. I am too. But they'll probably replace most before they replace me and the people around me. So it's tricky, but lots of ways can work. But I'm thinking 10 years out, not, hey, let me just apply new tools to an old mindset.
With such a big focus on the marketing and advertising side of the industry, I wanted to ask Billy how he's approaching staffing his agency in the future.
The companies do that. The companies are trying to push you. You need a marketer. You need this. You need that. And I'm not saying the thought process is bad. I'm just saying if you could hire another licensed agent or you can hire a marketer, licensed agents are shorter in supply. They just are. You can get per diem marketers. You can do all sorts of things to help you manage that stuff. But if you're given a choice and you have the funds to hire one person, I'd strongly suggest you hire someone who's licensed who could bring you revenue, because you can do all the marketing you want. And part of why we don't do more is because we've got a system that works. And quite frankly, we need more licensed people. We don't need any more marketers, right? And again, it's a sentiment that's been pushed and promoted out there that I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I'm not sure that people are getting the whole picture. what I do like from these things, and I don't know when it'll be published, but I wrote an article for somebody that eventually will get published, and I do enjoy the dialogues afterwards. I and myself, and I've recorded different podcasts and wrote different things, and there's a bunch of stuff out there, right? You can't read everything, and there's no sense sometimes in going through somebody's archive, but the dialogue that comes off of these conversations is really interesting. Like I sit here with a pen and paper nearby to say, okay, but what happened in there? And it may not come through right away, but what else did we talk about? Kind of like you said, but did I miss an angle that he's coming from? Like the shopping part or your UX discussion over the weekend. To the point you made before is like being open to other perspectives and just being the person that happens to help people buy insurance and saying, okay, that's cool. We found the best insurance website, but the thing is, it's actually not very good. So let's look at the best shopping website there is and see how it's, how can we do that in insurance kind of thing. And just being open is cool. And I appreciate the way you said it, where I feel like somewhere along, it was a few months ago, and like they say, the negative stuff hangs on there. And somebody had said something to me in such a way where I was like, wow, you did just take a dig at me. Like you totally just said, no, like they didn't want to directly insult me, but they certainly did it in a passive aggressive way. And I was kind of like, I got nothing wrong with the way you're approaching things, but you're framing it like a marketer, like in a positive way, and you're ignoring the truth of the situation. Like you're saying, there's a gentleman saying he was going to fix a certain thing, and I'm like, yeah, but what you just described is like an epidemic level industry wide, and as good as you think you are, there's ways that you can solve pieces of that immediately. And I'm wondering, are you actually doing them? Like, are you doing the things right now that you can do? Or are you, like you said, well, this is a good video and this is going to be our slogan for 2019, right? Like, are you actually doing the work that can solve those problems and then bringing that information to your carriers instead of trying to be everybody's friend and think that you're going to undo legacy problems? And I got to wonder, I'm not going to spend any time, like I know I'm bringing it up here, but I'm not going to spend much time in those discussions online. I'm just going to move on. But I appreciate that the way you said it. I like to think I'm fair with everybody. I don't hold back to be the guy that doesn't hold back. I don't hold back because I don't waste time. I'm not interested in that. Like, we're going to dive in, we're going to get after it. It's going to work. It's not going to work. Let's come to an outcome and let's move on. Now, that being said, you and I we've had some nice dialogues, and those dialogues are productive because they create other thoughts, right? That's the outcome. They don't know that going in, but then you get to that and you're good.
So that's going to wrap up my interview with Billy Vandra. I learned a lot from this discussion, and I hope you did as well. Please join me again next time as I continue to find out what's really going on in the United States of insurance.